Hey everybody, it's Thursday.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And I hear that we finally have some warmer weather coming our way. So for those of you that are south of us and already getting warm weather, maybe you're shocked by that. But you know, where we are kind of in the Northwoods here, it's still been honestly rainy and cloudy and kind of cool this entire week. And so I'm looking forward to some of that nice temperatures, those nice temperatures coming.
Yeah, we were on the river last weekend again, and we were expecting a little bit warmer temperatures, and the water temp actually dropped, so it kind of the fishing slowed down a tad bit. You know, we went out and tried some other stuff, and yeah, you got your first muskie last weekend.
It was really super exciting because we were walleye fishing. And I had a big long leader on my setup. And so what happened is I had reeled all the way in as far as I could reel, and there was still, a length of line, not even honestly that long, but this fish was holding so tight under the boat. And Josh was ready with a net looking at me like reeling more. And I'm like, I can't. So it was nice. We were able to guide this fish up and right into the net. And at that point, we still thought it was a walleye until you were the first one to notice it. And you said, it's a muskie. And I was like, what? So I don't know. That was a pretty unexpected surprise. And so that was pretty fun. Where we were fishing, I think we hear that muskies are caught there sometimes, but we've just never been lucky until that instance. So I do consider myself just that is lucky.
I think a lot of times we just kind of miss the little muskie flurry, because what happens is, the walleyes come in, the suckers are shortly after them, and I think muskies are up there to feed, a little pre-spawn feeding going on. And I think we are usually out of the river at that time just because a lot of our lakes open up. And this year, everything just kind of opened up. Hey, Gene. Everything just kind of opened up around the same time. And so we've just been kind of hanging out over there for no particular reason besides visiting our buddy Brian. It's been fun hanging out with him. We love going over there and visiting with him. So I think this weekend, we're still going to be on the river, but we're going south. That way south at our house. So we're going south and hitting the Wolf. So we're going to go try and fish around that. And then hopefully our local lakes will be a little bit warmer and we'll be able to get out on that. On the note of walleyes, it is our fishing opener here in Wisconsin, May 3rd. So this is kind of a timely conversation with our guest because he's talking about walleyes over on the East Coast. And we are, some of us have been fishing walleyes all spring, but for the rest of the state, it opens up this weekend. So it should be a fun time.
That is awesome. I'm looking forward to all of this. And I know for people who are just getting their boats out, this is that time of the year. Do those checkovers, make sure that you're prepared because we always seem to forget something the first time out, but that's all right.
Yep.
So I guess without further ado, let's just bring our guest in because I'm so excited. So Matt, thank you so much for being here tonight and welcome to the show. Oh, that's super crazy. Since we talked to you last, your audio has changed. Try saying hello again.
Hello, everybody. Is my audio not working?
You know what? It flashed in and out, which is super crazy. And I can kind of hear you, but it was better than the first time, which is weird.
We can kind of hear you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there you go.
See, now it's fine.
Now it's fine.
I don't know what's going on. Well, welcome to the show and thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's funny. You guys were just talking about weather and all that stuff. I'm in upstate New York and today's Thursday. So Tuesday, it was record highs. It was 91, 92 degrees. Yesterday, it was 50. Today, it was 75. Tomorrow's supposed to be 70. And then Monday or Saturday, Sunday is supposed to be 50. So it's, the old joke, if you're anywhere in upstate New York, is wait 5 minutes and the weather will change. If you don't like what it is now, give it a minute. It'll do something different. So in our
temperature swings, does that affect that fishing a lot then?
We just opened today. So today was our opening day of walleye. For years and years, matter of fact, most of my life, it was always the first Saturday. like from the sounds of it, it's like what you guys are. And then 2 years ago, the state said, well, it must be nobody can remember that, and let's go to a calendar date when they went to May 1st. So, yeah, I don't know that it affected anything that tremendously. I mean, a cold front will do wonders for a good walleye bite, and shut it right down. But I fished this morning for opening day with a camera crew, and we had our first 20-inch walleye in the boat before I even got the second rod in the water. So it seemed to be just fine. They didn't seem to bother them any.
So Emily's getting a little ahead of the game here. So Matt, for those people out there that don't know who you are and kind of what you kind of do on the social sphere, you wanna kind of fill everybody in on your background?
Yeah, I'm a content creator. I've got my YouTube channel, The Awakening Angler. God, I'm going into my 7th year now, I think, doing that. I own a big walleye derby here locally in upstate New York, and we were talking off air. I average about 1,000 anglers a year fishing our opening weekend derby. And on the creator side, I sit on a handful of pro staffs nationally, Starcraft Boats and JT Rods and Cortland Line and fun companies like that are great to work with. And this year for 2025, for me, we've started our own virtual tournament app. And there's a couple other out there in the world, like a Fish Donkey or Fishing Chaos, or there's a couple different ones in that sphere. But we're different in the respect that we're very much walleye centric in this so far. And we also have our own social media platform inside our app. We're not just tournament entry. So we got a lot of stuff going on. And by this time next year, I really hope to be out into Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Minnesota, and expand and really bring that full-fledged tournament feeling to the walleye world, like you see in the bass world all the time.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's like a whole bunch to unpack there, but let's start kind of. So where did the Awakening Angler come from? Like, how did you come up with this? What do you do with it?
Well, it started for me back during COVID when we were here on lockdown, and I was just watching fishing videos. I've been a guide since I came home from the military when I was 22. Guided for years full time, chartered on the Great Lakes. I ran drift boats for trout and salmon in our local tributaries of the Great Lakes and whatnot. But I was watching YouTube. We're trying to find stuff locally from YouTube back then during the pandemic, and there was just nobody in my market out there. And my wife bought me a GoPro for my birthday that year and said, "Why don't you do something?" And one thing leads to another. You never quite know where the road's going to take you when you start walking down it. And here I am years later, and it's again, I've been a full-time fisherman in my life before. That's all I did and guide, and now I'm going back in that route, and with guiding, but with what we're doing with tournament and this kind of thing it's really interesting to me, and the promotion side of it. So, but the Awakening Angler came out of necessity. I live on the largest lake in New York State, Inland Lake, and there was nobody out here doing this. And so I started doing it, and lo and behold, people enjoyed it. So I kept talking, and they kept watching.
That's cool. And then to be able to, I guess, provide information, connection, community to those that are around you in New York and way even beyond that, that is a really cool opportunity.
Community is a big word. The fishing industry is it's a small group And it's pretty tightly knit once you get into it. And it's amazing. I mean, if we sat down off air, I'm sure we could make a list of mutual friends, and we're 5 states apart, you know. So the community of the fishing world and all of the, think of all the wonderful people we know solely because of fishing now in our lives. So community is a big, and connection and fun is big buzzwords for me and everything that I do, no matter what it is, because I just believe in that. You know, I believe in everything we do, and I've never, in all my years of guiding and everything I've ever done, I've never seen anybody unhappy while reeling in a fish. You know, so there's a certain therapeutic value to it as well that we all can share together.
Well, and I love what you're talking about because that connects right on back with the tournaments that you're putting on.
Yeah. And that's why we've done the social media platform as well. And we're just, I mean, we're in our infancy. You know, like I say, this weekend, 2 days from now, will be the very first event we've ever run within our app. I mean, we're still getting people to even accept it and embrace it and give it a chance, you know. And then within the app, all of these platforms, they have a CPR philosophy: catch, photograph, release. Started with the kayak fishermen and the kayak bass fishermen because they had no choice. They didn't have room for a live well. They couldn't transport fish to a centralized weighing station. And now, you know, while it's funny, I have a couple friends here locally in New York State that are biologists, fisheries biologists for the state. And walleye are the touchiest, most fussy fish to try to keep in captivity in any way, shape, or form. And these are from biologists, you know. So you put 5 walleye or 10 walleye into a live well and you race them all over the lake all day long and beat the crap out of them, their survival rate is almost nil. They might still be alive when you get to the weigh-in, but they're not going to live. And to me, the first year I did this, honestly, and I love a walleye fried fish dinner as much as the next person. And I'm not saying that we should never keep another fish. Please don't get me wrong. But in my humble opinion, when you put money into the mix and it becomes sport fishing, I think those fish should live. It's the biggest of the big fish in your lake system. And I think we should do everything we can to protect them and protect that resource, even if it's, and again, I'm living on a put and take hatchery based fishery, but that doesn't mean that I don't respect and care for the species that I'm chasing.
I think that's a really great thing to, I guess, to say out loud, because I think so many people like don't talk about that. You know, some people, put and take. I think especially with opener coming out, you see this a lot with ponds that are stocked with trout. I don't know if that's regional to over here. And so what'll happen is I actually just saw in the local paper that there was a pond not far away, and it was like, here's what we put in, stocked up, like ready to go for opener. But I just know that people are going to go, and on that first weekend, like, how many of those fish honestly get caught out of those small ponds? So, I mean, I don't know, but it's crazy. It's crazy. And I think people are like, well, it's put there for us. So they, I don't know, maybe feel like they don't have to respect it or something. I don't know. I guess I'm trying not to make an assumption, but I do love what you're saying, that even though this is a larger lake or sometimes a chain of lakes or whatever it is that are being stocked, there's still a lot of room for respect for these species, but because this is still a catch and release. So you can still put that fish back. Somebody else will still catch it, hopefully when it's bigger.
And the beauty of this catch and release is we're not so. I'm only about an hour and a half from the St. Lawrence Seaway, Thousand Islands, and which has now been ranked #1 fishery in North America for bass for the last like 2 or 3 years by BASS. You know, so last year I watched the 4-day Elite Series up there and watched these guys, and as a matter of fact, they were all. Most of the winners were fishing right off this one small town at the very mouth of the river. So where they launched to where they were catching their fish was in one way about 75 or 80 miles. All right. And I know this area very well. I grew up in that area. And so it's, they fish Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We went up Monday morning and they set all kinds of record. I think they had multiple 2 or 3 different people break the 100-pound Century Club for that derby. It is absolutely filthy with giant smallmouth in the 6 to 8 pound range. Like they're just beasts. And most of the field were fishing in an area about 10 square football fields off this one buoy where this current edge comes down in, where it's 40 feet deep here and it's 140 feet, just off the edge of it.
Wow.
And it's just one of those spots, and it just fills in with giants. We went up Monday morning, the morning after the derby was over, with live scope, scanned all morning long, and we scanned 3 fish in a whole day. And I sat there that morning and I thought to myself, all those big fish got stuffed in live wells and they got ran 90 miles downriver, and never in their lifetime will they make it back to where they were caught. Now, there's no studies out there. I spoke to multiple different biologists, friends of mine, that they weren't going to speak on record because there's no scientific study to back it up, but they all said the same thing to me. My guess is those fish will never return to where they were caught. And I don't know what that does to the fish, to the ecosystem, to the gene pool. That spot was so great that other fish will find it, but not the ones you took off there. And I don't necessarily know what that means, but I just don't see how logically it means something good. And again, when it's for money, if you're just going out to catch a limit of fish to eat, do what you want to do. We all know as fishermen, the better eating fish are the smaller ones. If you were going to go walleye fishing, you keep those 15 to 18 inches because that's, they're big enough to be legal, but not so big that you got to worry about, toxins and heavy metals in the flesh and all that stuff. And nobody wants to go have a meal of 30 inches, that because it's just not the same. There's no way around that. So I just think when there's money involved, we're the ones that utilize these resources. We should be the ones that are its biggest champions.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I'm wrong, I listen, and I've had pushback here on my lake, and we do a big fish derby. So it's not even like you're catching multiples. You're just entering your one big fish. And if you enter that fish in the derby, it has to be released with a video release in the app as part of your submission. And I've had people already push back. I had a guy today tell me I was a scumbag for making it unacceptable to keep a fish while fishing. And I'm like, okay, but I'm not forcing you to join my derby. You could say, I don't want to. And to boot, all the other fish you catch while you're out there, you can very easily keep your limit according to the state of the smaller ones. I don't see the problem. But hey, to each their own. But that's just how I do and see things. And even my years as a guide, I found one of my old guide brochures from when I was first starting out. And the very first paragraph on the inside cover says, I believe in CPR, catch, photograph, and release. Again, I eat a lot of fish, but I don't eat enough that I have to worry about killing every single one of them. And I don't think I've ever once said to myself, boy, I could go for a fish dinner. I got to go fishing. I go fishing, and then if I catch a few, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll have a fish dinner. So I just think that for me, that's just mindset. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and when you're talking about releasing these big fish, you always get the argument also like, well, if it's my biggest, if it's my PB, maybe I'll get it mounted. And I understand that too, but also shout out to the different taxidermists that are doing replicas these days, because
Yeah.
if you in that moment are already getting a length of the fish for a tournament, or maybe that weight is asked for perhaps sometimes, but just keep a soft measuring tape in your boat wherever, and then you can get that girth of the fish. You can still do your photo, you can still do your release video, but then you have all of that data and that information. And just like I said, shout out to those replicas, because they look just as good or better than skin mounts, in my opinion, I guess.
Well, and there's not many people, because you're spot on, Emily. I'm going to tell you right now, and I had that conversation with the gentleman that called me a scumbag, which I, again, found interesting. And you have to you guys know, you're in social media, you put yourself out there, and that means you expose yourself to people's opinions. And hiding behind a screen like this, you can say anything you want to somebody without, Josh is a big boy. I mean, what someone would say to his face versus what they would say behind a screen are two different things, I don't know many taxidermists here locally that still do full skin mounts. Most all of them are doing some sort of replica, whether it's skin with a fake head, or whether they're full replicas, So again, it's I don't know. I just think those are antiquated arguments, and people can do what they want, but for me, and in the events that I own and run, here's my rules. If you don't like them, don't participate. And we're giving away, if we hit our full 1,000, that's our threshold line. If we hit 1,000 entries for this weekend's derby, I'm guaranteeing 20,000 in cash and prizes just for that main leaderboard. And it's a $25 entry fee, so can you really complain about that? I spent $25 to win 5,000. You're the worst. I mean, come on, let's be realistic here. So,
well, and that's exactly the point, because with that being said, you do have all kinds of people that are signed up and super excited, and that is such a great thing.
Yeah. Yes. And it's one weekend a year. The rest of the time you want to kill everything you catch, then do it. The state says you can do it. I say you can do it. Do whatever you want, but in these events, I just think, and nowadays too, for your sponsors, I see all your amazing sponsors on your backdrop. It's when you're out there representing someone in a company like that, you have to portray that face that, Stryker or Amped or any of those companies, Lakewood, I don't think any of them want blood on their hands, so to speak, and think that, we're supporting somebody that's just, we don't care about the resources. Let's just take every single thing we catch, because that's not the ambassador and the face that these companies want out there. And it's a different era that we live in. And again, I have nothing against, I eat plenty of fish every year. I mean, I just bought 30 pounds of fresh perch fillets this morning from a friend of mine who personally caught them and filleted them, because we do a free fish fry during our awards ceremony at the tournament, that we give away to people. So I'm all about eating them, but we got to be realistic, like same with those big perch. I don't think it nearly matters as much with the perch. That doesn't mean I don't respect perch, but we still release those big perch. You want to keep the other 50 a day, that's your limit of the 9 to 10 inchers, and let that big 14 incher go. Well, okay. I mean, whatever you want. But I know we're in no shortage of perch in the world. I mean, there's no shortage of walleye in my lake, but some of the, it's funny, because if you took one of these tournaments to Lake Erie's another one, you see those pictures from Lake Erie, every guide, every charter, every fisherman. I mean, there's just piles of dead walleye. And I know that they say they've got 100 million walleye in that lake. That doesn't mean that any of them are any less valuable to me, quite honestly, than any of the other ones. I mean, and they take a lot of them out of there. God bless them. But the vulnerable fisheries, people are like, oh yeah, well that makes sense. But then you're still valuing one over another for some unknown factor. You know, I mean, you either are respectful of it or you're not. I mean, Great Lakes salmon fishing taught me that years ago when I was young. You used to see guys in the town that I guided in because those fish come up the river to die. And you always heard, oh, well, they're going to die anyway. And the state used to allow people to snag with grappling hooks, weighted treble hooks in our rivers. And it was the ugliest, most obscene situation that you could possibly imagine. I imagine it was akin to the Wild West when they used to shoot buffalo off the back of the trains just to do it and leave them there, because it was so disrespectful. I mean, you'd see 5-10 salmon tied to a rope to the bumper of a truck, and they would drag them down the street down to the cleaning station. I don't even know why people would pay to clean them at that point, because you knew damn well they weren't going to eat them. They just wanted to have that. Look what I got, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but I just don't think that way. And the people that are with me, and then the other platforms out there in this world, I think are the same way. I think there's more of us that we care to talk about.
Well, and this topic is a great segue into both of our openers, right? So you had your opener today. We have ours in a couple days. And it's a good reminder that it's opener, right? That means that you have the whole season ahead of you to get your limits and do all that. And I really do think that this time of year, no matter what species, I think it's just busier, right? Sometimes there's some people that this is the only weekend that they go fishing, right? And that's hard for some of us to believe, but that they go fishing this weekend and they make it their weekend. And so maybe we can all just kind of be respectful and just throw a few back here and there, and just so everybody can enjoy themselves. And then the rest of the season, you continue on doing your own thing. But it just keep that mindset throughout the season too. I know Emily and I talk a lot about CPR on our show here. I think mostly from my point of view, it's mostly just conserving the resource for even my future use. Not even, a lot of people talk about, kids and this and that and that. But what it comes down to is you still want to go catch fish. That's what you want to do. And so you can't continue to do that if you wreck it for yourself. Inherently.
No question.
That saves it for everybody else. And so I think it's a good point to kind of think about while you're out there fishing with, your friends or family this weekend. And it's great to have to see a lot of these apps coming out that allow this. I think that our technology has gotten to a point where it makes it easier to find fish. I don't think the technology itself makes it easier to catch fish, right? Because there's still a lot to do with catching the actual harvesting of the fish into your boat. But finding fish is a lot easier nowadays. Cataloging your catch is a lot easier nowadays. Even measuring and stuff like that has come leaps and bounds from a Stanley tape measure or a piece of rope that you measure when you get home. There's $150 bump boards that you can buy there. We just had a guest on our show not too long ago. There's an AI app called Fish Techie that uses a little measuring ball, and it uses AI to give you a virtual length, so the fish doesn't even have to touch your boat. You can take it from the net, take a picture, throw it back. It's that quick. You could get a measurement. So I think all that stuff coupled together really makes it a very friendly environment for sport fishermen. I think nowadays it's not as hard to let some of those fish go, because I think we have a lot more confidence in being able to replicate our success, and kind of be like, well, if I do want to go eat fish, the hardest part is just getting them to bite on what I'm throwing and figuring that part out. You don't have, there's a lot of the puzzle pieces are a lot easier to place now, I think.
Oh no, I agree with you. There's and again, part of it for me is just when there's money involved and we're doing it for sport, for the sport of, showing our angling prowess. I just think that when it is for sport like that, that we should look at things differently.
Mhm.
That's all. And again, that's really just my opinion. And my tournament is length only. We've all seen all of these terrible cheating situations, from the Lake Erie walleye cheaters to that big crappie last year. And was it the Kansas state record that they disallowed because it was shoved full of ball bearings?
Yeah.
And it's funny you bring up that fish techie. I had looked into that heavily and trying to integrate that into our system, and was thinking about reaching out to them. But the simple fact is that even that fish techie, it's using an AI model to calculate basically a square inch measurement of the surface of that fish. And you start messing with girth because you've stuffed it, whether you shove it put a hose down its throat and shove it full of water, it's still expanding it beyond its natural, size, and it's skewing the measurement process. So length is one of those things. It's not that it's not cheatable, it's just much harder to do so. And so by taking weight and girth measurements out of our equation, our tiebreaker is the time that it's entered into the tournament. So it's really first come, first serve. You catch your 27 incher at 8 o'clock, and Emily catches hers at 8:05. Well, the 8 o'clock one is winning. That's just because that's one of those things that, again, we can't. It helps with sandbagging for one thing, and even then too, once the derby starts and the leaderboard goes live on the app, our app generates a ghost name for everybody. So the outside world doesn't know who's in the leaderboard. So you're not following around the leaders like lost puppies going, hey, well, they caught a big one. Maybe they know where they are. We try to protect the competition of it. No one wants to feel like they've been cheated. We do polygraphs, mandatory polygraphs after the tournament and before the award ceremony for the top 3 spots in every category. And that costs us a lot of money and time, but you can never completely, eradicate cheating in anything in this world. If the human being is so motivated to cheat on something, whether it's your spouse or a fishing tournament, you're going to figure out a way to do it. We've just tried to do everything we can to eradicate that, or make it as hard as possible to keep it fun. Really, ultimately, to keep it fun, so everybody feels like they've got a fair shake at this. The app tracks your GPS location in your phone and all that fun stuff.
That's awesome. So earlier you mentioned showing off fishing prowess. So I'm going to kind of switch gears here from the conservation side, and I'm really curious to what most of the anglers for your tournament are going to turn to for fishing tactics this time of year for you guys, because you guys have a similar opening to us. So what do you guys out there use while you're fishing for opening weekend?
So our winner last year was a 27-inch walleye. It was caught in 5 foot of water in middle of the day. This morning in our lake, water temp was 50, 51, right in there. And just, I was out a week ago, for a boat ride one evening with my wife, and the water temp was in the low 40s then. So it's come up pretty quickly. Our hatchery took all of their fish the 3rd or 4th week of May, of March, when they put their nets out after the ice had left the lake. So that early spawn run is our heaviest here, but you'll still find these fish pushed up shallow. Even if they're post spawn, they're still gorging themselves in those old weed beds on those new young of the year perch and bluegills and baby bass and bullhead that live in those shallows, and those shallows warm up first. So it draws all that bait fish into those shallow water. You and I know, I mean, you can catch, everybody thinks walleye is solely a deep water fish. Our lake is not that deep to begin with, and it's ringed by weed beds that go all the way out in most places to 16, 17 feet deep, depending on clarity. And I think a huge portion of those walleyes live in those weed beds 15 feet or shallower year round, their whole life. And I don't think enough of us as walleye fishermen go in those shallow areas and target those fish, which tend to be bigger and way more aggressive in those close quarters because they're safe in there, so to speak. It's like, it'd be like hunting a deer herd on a private piece of property that's 10,000 acres, and you're the only one that can go in there that's ever went in there. They have no fear of you because they're not necessarily accustomed to you. You know, those big walleyes in those weed beds, they're an apex predator. I think they lay there in wait most of their life and just eat whatever they want to. And so you can go in there this time of year. Now, this morning I was trolling all morning, but I was trolling with flat lines and floating stick baits in 10 foot of water with a full spread out. You know, we could have been trolling in 40 foot of water with snap weights with the same spread. That Scatter Wrap number 9 Rapala floater, the original, is deadly. You could cast it if it would cast, you know, far enough, which it doesn't really because it's so light. But you know, you go in those shallows, you can throw a 3-4 inch swim bait on a 1/8 ounce or a 16th ounce head. You can throw any kind of floating stick bait that you want up in there. Curly tail grubs are deadly this time of year, especially the 4 inchers, the bigger, you know, that little bigger profile. You know, and one of my pro tips for the Derby is fish shallower than you think you should. Not that you can't catch those fish out deeper. It just, in my opinion, they tend to be more schoolies out there. And these bigger fish, I think, have migrated into these weed beds, and you can catch them there all season long in the heat of the summer, in the bright of the sun, in the middle of the day. You know, it's not like it's a cover of darkness. And on our lake, there's a huge fall night bite casting from shore. Guys will do that until they freeze their hands off at night. You can do that this time of year too, in the same spots and have that same success rate. But in the spring, people think, oh, I got to get out deep offshore. You know, my biggest pro tip for anywhere you are in the walleye belt is, boy, you can fish shallower than you ever dreamed of. And I think have your really higher success rate and percentages of getting those big fish in shallow.
Gosh, I don't even know almost what to say, because that is honestly like a really great walkthrough, and a lot of really great information that I think people can really apply to no matter where they are. I also love the nods to shore fishing, because I think so often this time of the year, you're talking about how people want to jump in the boat and go to the middle of the lake and cool, like go for it, right? But how many people out there don't even have a boat. And so to be able to have access to shore fishing, but, have real opportunities for finding fish. I think that's a really unique opportunity because as summer goes on, those fish, they do push around and they do get into those really thick weed beds. It's hard to get them out sometimes, or, those deeper parts of the lake. And so, when shore anglers, they have that opportunity to reach these fish and, have that opportunity. That's great. They get out there.
Yeah. Our lake doesn't have a ton of shore access publicly.
Yeah.
Our lake is very built up with homes, and not even cottages. Most of our lake is ringed by year-round homes, but again, that doesn't mean that those fish aren't there. And oddly enough, when you're in the boat, especially like if you're casting at night, they don't seem to respond as well when you're offshore casting towards shore, as well as they are when you're onshore casting offshore. That seems to be the better trick, and especially another thing for shallow water is, and it's this way with anything in the walleye world, but being on the windward shore, being where that water is a little turbid and bounced up, and those prey species, whether it's crayfish, whether it's any of the minnows or young of the year species, they're getting beat up by that wind and that turbidness of that crashing on shore. That's a walleye's hunting area. They can see better than anybody else. They're an apex predator, and they're just honed right in that shallow water. And those strikes, we all know that walleyes can kind of fight like an old shoe sometimes. You're trolling, even those giants they catch in Lake Erie, you're trolling out in the middle of nowhere at 2.5, 3 miles an hour, and you're just cranking it in. You rip a jig or something through those weed beds later in the summer, those walleye strikes are violent. I mean, because they're not messing around, and it's close combat, and those fights are hard, and they're all over the place, and talk to any of your local bass fishermen that throw spinner baits religiously in weed beds and find out how many walleyes they catch on spinner baits as a bycatch, to the point where I've talked to guys who are like, I can't go in there anymore because you can't keep the walleyes off a spinner bait. And can you imagine going to somebody and going, like, can you imagine going to a sports show and trying to sell walleye fishermen spinner baits? They'd laugh at you, but every year I catch a pile of them, and so does everybody else that's throwing them in those 5 to 10 foot weed beds, zipping them across the top of the weeds. Boy, there's walleyes, and they just throttle it. They're exciting fish when you get them in other elements.
I think that's so funny because I love hearing this also from the muskie fishermen. And they're like, oh, those garbage walleye. And it's like, wait. But I think that there's something to learn there, whether that's upsizing your bait, whether that's that different presentation, maybe just doing something different than you've done before. Shout out to that, because coming into this new, the new season, the open water season here, this is the time to try all that and, take something out of your tackle box that maybe you haven't used before.
Well, and this is like, if you don't believe, Matt, or you don't believe us, like, all three of us know Ted Takasaki, and this is one of his favorite stories, talking about how he fishes spinner baits, like troll spinner baits, over treetops out in the mountains. And so like, if you guys haven't seen any of Ted's talks on that or any of those videos, you really should, because it's very interesting on that technique that he's kind of developed, and it's not talked about very much. But if you don't believe us, like, believe Ted Takasaki, because he's caught more walleyes than probably all three of us combined.
Yeah. It's funny, since getting into this content world, and if anybody ever watches any of my videos, especially my older ones, to me, if somebody out there, a talking head, sits on camera and says there's only one way to do it, I stop listening. I immediately, because I'm like, that's not true. It's not even remotely true. And there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, or in this instance, to catch a walleye. And so I am a firm believer in you can make your own luck with a lot of different tools. And if someone says to me, oh, there's only one way, there's only one presentation, there's no, I'll tell you, I'll be the first to tell you how I'm doing it and what I have success on, but you'll never hear me say my way is the only way, because that's you're setting yourself up for failure right there. That's just not the case. Nothing is ever any one thing all the time. And walleyes are funny. Al and Ron Linder made their first fortune on the Lindy rigs, which was a leader with a hook on one end and a split shot on it. Like, and nowadays you went to the local walleye tournaments and they would look at you like you were a fool if you showed up and drug a Lindy rig. You can be as simple or as complex as you want in this world. And walleyes, it doesn't matter what species. It really doesn't. You can do a lot of crazy things for a lot of different species and have them react. You talk about musky fishermen, or now like with these glide baits that these guys fish for bass that are, 12 to 15 inches long, and they're catching smallmouth that are smallmouth, even not even largemouth, smallmouth, who everyone immediately thinks is somehow inferior to a largemouth and wouldn't possibly take that big a bait. And these guys are fishing glide baits that are this long on broomsticks just to be able to cast them out there, and that came from musky guys fishing these weed edges and stuff with giant musky baits and being tortured by bass and going, I don't want these bass. I want the muskies. And the bass are like, well, we don't care what you want. We want that. So it's funny how that kind of stuff happens.
That is for sure. So at this point in the conversation, I have to say I'm excited to get out and be fishing this weekend, because no matter what we catch, it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
But for your tournament, do you tell us a little bit more? Do you have to be local? Can people still sign up? How do you get information?
Yeah, this is a local just for this one lake. But you go to walleyefest.com. That is our website. That is right now, it is solely information on this derby coming up on Oneida Lake in upstate New York. But if your viewers are from, Eastern Ohio or Northern Pennsylvania, we've got right now, I think we've got 6 or 7 states represented. We've got most of New England, certainly Vermont, New Hampshire, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, that have already entered into our tournament. There's no kind of restrictions on who can enter. It's 36 hours. It starts at 12:01 a.m. Saturday morning, and it goes to 11:59 a.m. Sunday morning. So it's 36 consecutive hours. Everything is done in the app. All of our tournament entry, all of your fish entry, buy your tickets. What I will say exciting, though, is for all your viewers, watch for us in the future. You can download the app and be a part of the community from anywhere in the country. You can host your own tournament. There could be the Crappie Junction tournament of any species you want using our app. Our app is derby.fish. There's a little purple fish in the logo. So you can go to the Apple store, you can go to the Android store, download it for free and be a part of our community. And again, I will say that this is the first social media platform built solely for fishermen by fishermen. We don't have to, we have public standards in place. No offense to the ladies that do it, but we don't have to have, scantily clad women holding fish that you don't want to open up. And like, I'm a married man and I've got 2 daughters, I don't want to see that kind of stuff. I want to be able to look through the app with my wife and kids sitting there and not go, oh God, don't look at that. So we have public standards that apply to all of our social media. So anybody in the country, in the world, can go be part of the app, download it for free, participate in the social media. And as we start expanding the rest of this year, we're going to start offering other events in other states remotely, that will be open to everybody in their area. So
that is so exciting.
Sounds awesome.
We really are looking forward to that. And so I know that we'll watch social media and all that for information. But for people who just want to follow you and the Awakening Angler, how do they find you on social media?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube as the Awakening Angler. We're also on Facebook as Walleye Fest, and that will that'll start to expand a little bit. And the two are tied together. My YouTube channel will be our official, for right now, channel for everything that is Walleye Fest. And as we expand, we may go and spawn off a second channel to do just that. Like this Sunday from 11 to 6, from 2 o'clock on, you can tune in to the Awakening Angler YouTube channel. We will live stream the whole award ceremony, giving out all the cash and prizes. So anybody please can join in and watch. And we got big things coming, and we're gonna provide the walleye world with the exposure that it doesn't ever seem to get. Especially for those of us that live across the northern part of our country and into Canada. Unless, of course, Canada becomes our 51st state, and then or 52nd state, or whatever it is, then I'll be up there all over the place.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, good luck with the tournament and with everything else. But we really
Thank you
being here tonight to talk about all of this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's nice to be back and see you guys again.
Yeah. And boy, did the time fly by, because we had so much fun here. And to everybody at home, thank you for being here and being a part of the fun. And we're looking forward to seeing everyone on next week's edition of The Night Bite.
Night, everybody.